So magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat sa pagpunta niyo dito ngayon. Don't get too excited. With that, the Tagalog portion of my speech is over, and it's all nosebleed from here on. So please bear with me. You know, Richard, in his introduction in the emails, talked a lot about my experience in the U.S. when I was just starting out and I was a dishwasher, and a few people texted me and said, Maulik, I didn't know you were a dishwasher in the U.S. You started your career as a dishwasher. So I thought before I talk about why we are here and what are the 7 habits of a great leader, I want to talk about what that experience was, because there are a couple of great life lessons that I came out with. On January 8th, 1992, I arrived in this very small town called Lubbock, Texas. Anybody have been to Lubbock, Texas? Wow. I thought I'm not going to have anybody who has been to this Texas town. It's a very small university town. I was 21 years old. I just finished my engineering degree in India. My parents had taken a $10,000 loan to send me to the US so I can pursue my master's degree in computer science. 2 things were very clear to me at that time. $10,000 is not going to pay for 2 years of school in the US. I'll be running out of money by the time my first semester is over. By the time I paid for my college, my school supplies, lodging and boarding, I'll be out of the money. And I also knew that unless I find another job that would pay for part of my expenses, most likely I'll be packing my bags and I'll be going back to India, which would be a huge loss of face, not only for myself, but for my family as well. So I knew that was not something that I was prepared to do. I had no other choice but to make it happen. Now, how many of you been to US for graduate studies? Anybody has been to the US to do masters? Okay, a few people here. You know that the 2 best jobs you can get as an international student in the US is either you become a research assistant or you become a teaching assistant. The problem with me then was I was fresh off the boat, directly from India. My English wasn't that good, and I had this very thick Indian accent. I was talking like the Apu character in The Simpsons. So no American professor was going to ask me to go in front of people and say, please, go teach these people. Nobody's going to understand me. The problem with the research assistantship was I was coming in the middle of the school. Typically, it starts in September, and you have a better chance of getting a research assistantship. I was starting in January. So I had to wait for 6 more months before I can find someone to hire me as a research assistant. So very quickly, I knew the 2 best jobs were not something that would be possible for me. So I had to change gears. I went to the Office of International Students, and I told them that I have to find a job. It's not a choice. I don't want to go back to India after 6 months. So they made calls, and the only job they could find was this early morning shift working in a dishwashing room for one of the dorms on campus. And I didn't really care what it was. I'm like, hallelujah, I found a job, sign me up. Didn't even ask what that job entailed. So I signed up. 2 days later, 5:30 in the morning, I arrived, and my manager is there, and I realized that this job was not about washing dishes for 20 people, 30 people, 50 people. I was going to wash dishes every single morning for 800 students who lived in that dorm every single morning. And then my manager took me around the dishwashing room, and it was probably 1/4 the size of this ballroom. And he showed me this big conveyor belt that would be bringing in all these dirty dishes that students put on. And I had to stand on the other side of the conveyor belt, waiting for the dishes to come in, spray clean all the dishes, put them on the trays, and then put them through this humongous dishwasher right next to me. And then I had to wait on the other side of the dishwasher to make sure the trays were unloaded so they don't topple over. It was no problem most of the time. But every time, 7:30 to 8:30, when it's a rush hour, all the students want to sleep in as much as they can, and then they want to have a quick breakfast and go to the class. 700 dishes will come within an hour. And most of the time, I'll have like a couple of glasses breaking apart, you know, and my manager will come running into it, hearing the noise, and say, "Dude, please don't break any more glasses." And I'm like, "Yes, I will try my best." By that time, he had realized that this guy is not going to be the best dishwasher who has worked for him, and I was happy about that as well. 2 months into it, it was too much during the peak hour. I could not handle spray cleaning these dishes on one side, running to the other side of the dishwasher, and unloading the trays. And one day, this big tray with 50 glasses just toppled over. And it made a big noise, and I'm like, "Patay." I didn't know Tagalog at that time. I said, "Oh, geez, what happened?" And my manager came running into this room. He looked at me, and he said, "Dude." He kept calling me dude. I think it must be the 90s thing. It's like, "Please come and meet me in my room after your shift." So I finished my shift. I knew what was about to happen. I knew I'm going to get fired. And most likely I was going to pack my bags and go back to India. So I'm ready. I'm like, "Let's bring it on." I go into his room, and he said, "Dude, you have broken more glasses than anybody else who has worked for me. But I do like your attitude. I like the fact that you always come to work 15 minutes before you're supposed to." I was probably the most excited dishwasher he had ever worked with. And I was willing to stay longer if he needed some help, even if it meant I had to skip some classes. So he knew he can rely on me. So he said, "You know what? I like you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually transfer you to the front line. Tomorrow, when you come to work, you're going to go stand behind those breakfast buffet line, and you're going to serve breakfast to our students." I could not believe it. I mean, I was shocked. I was speechless. I want to say, "Thank you, dude," but I couldn't bring myself to say that anymore. I was like, "Wow, this is unbelievable." I was very excited. Even though it was a lateral move, no more money, I was just so happy that I got out of that dishwashing room. It was probably the first promotion that I got in my entire career. Next morning I came. Please, no, Born, go for it. I'm glad that you are as excited about that as myself. But next morning I go to the front line, and I am being a vegetarian all my life. I never thought I could be so excited to serve bacon and sausages and eggs and the ham and cheese omelet to people. I mean, people would come and say, "Please give me one sausage." I'm like, "No, take two." But the reason I wanted to share this experience with you is because, one, it's an humbling experience. It reminds me of where I came from. It reminds me of my background every time I think about it. And I know when I was sharing this experience with you, all of you went through your memory lane as well, and you realize some of you also had similar experience. I think one thing we should always keep in mind is when we meet people who are also starting in the dishwashing room, instead of showing off our title to them and say, "Look how good I am compared to you. Look at my title versus yours. Look at my office versus your cubicle," I think we gotta reach out to these people and give them that helping hand that somebody else gave us in our life once. The number two reason I get excited about reminding myself of this experience is because there were two lessons for me, one as an employee and one as a leader. As an employee, I remember that even though I didn't like washing dishes, even though I was not good at it, even though it was not my passion, the reason I got to the front line is because I brought my excitement and my reliability to work every single day. One of my mentors, Zig Ziglar, once said, "It's not your aptitude, but your attitude that determines your altitude." It's not your attitude, but your attitude that determines your altitude, how far you go in life. The lesson I learned as a leader was not clear to me for 10 more years, actually. It dawned on me when I was reading this book by Jim Collins, Good to Great. How many of you have read that book? Excellent book. I recommend everyone to read that book. In his book, he says, bring the right people on the bus and make sure they're sitting on the right seats. My manager in the dining hall didn't appear to me like a big management guru. He didn't appear to me he's like a big management consultant. But he was wise. As soon as he figured out that I was no good in washing dishes, but I was good for the culture he was building, he found me the right seat in the organization. So ask yourself, do you have people on your team today who may not be the right fit for the job, but they are right fit for the culture? They are willing. They may not be able. Can you find another seat for them so they stop breaking the glasses and do something else for your organizations?